full-time up on base for quality assurance. And
Oh,
then I have
okay.
a landscape curbing company. So
Okay.
I do that. When I get off the base, I go out and help my guys. And then nonprofit president and podcast host. So
I knew about the podcast. I knew about the nonprofit. You guys are killing it. I didn't know that you own a landscaping business though. That's
landscape
pretty cool.
curbing, only landscape curbing, not a full-on landscaping business, just
Okay.
landscape
Okay.
concrete curbing around flower beds.
Okay. Oh, right on, man. So is that something that you just did on the side or how'd you get into that?
I started doing that in high school.
Oh,
Uh,
really? So you've had it for that long? Huh?
well, I've done it for that long. I
Okay.
was doing it with my buddy. He owned the company, God, 13, 14 years ago now, maybe 15. And he started a mulch company from the ground up and didn't have time to run both. And I was working at Fresenius Medical Care as a quality engineer and for research and development. And I finished a project that saved the company about $8.5 million a year. And boss put me up in front of everybody and was like, look how good he did, blah, blah, blah. Wait till you get your bonus. Next payday came, I got a $25 bonus and I put in my 2-week notice and bought out my buddy's company. But
Are
never
you
again will I have somebody else tell me what my worth is.
Yeah, wow, dude. What happened? Did you ever figure out what the heck
Well,
happened
she
with that?
says, well, it was supposed to be 75. Like,
Oh my
you got it.
gosh.
And my boss got a $60,000 a year raise. So I know exactly
Oh,
what happened to my bonus.
yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, man. And good for you. You should have bolted. Screw that, dude. What the
Mhm.
heck, man? Oh my. Well, that's kind of the beautiful thing, right? That's one of the beautiful things about life is, you get to start whatever you want. You get to start over. You can forge a new path no matter what happens. And that's kind of the whole point of your podcast. And I'm sure you're not nonprofit, right?
Right.
That's insane, man. I mean, and it's also really good. So tell me a little bit about what caused you. I mean, I know you're a veteran. I met you through, or excuse me, we talked one time when Dre and Angel called you
Yep.
on the
Yeah, we
podcast,
talked.
and so I thought it was great. I love those guys, and so I mean, I know a little bit, but tell me like, obviously you're a veteran, but tell me like the whole story and the genesis of like how your nonprofit and podcast got started.
So kind of to go, it starts way back. I got home from Iraq in 2005 after an 18-month combat deployment. Been blown up numerous times,
Jeez.
which in itself is a struggle. But
Mm-hmm.
came home probably 4 years after I got home, about 2009. My dad pulled me aside and told me I'm gonna lose my family if I don't change because I'm was kind of an ass. Easiest way to say it. I treated my kids like they were soldiers and not little kids. Like I would fly off the handle if they didn't eat all of their vegetables or eat all their dinner, or when you get home from school, this is your regimen. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So he pulled me aside,
Mm-hmm.
and I noticed obviously that he was right, that there was a problem. And then I went and sought help at the VA. At the time, they were not doing any mental health for people that weren't Vietnam veterans. So kind of missed the boat on that and then just said, screw it, whatever. This is how my life's going to
So
be.
So they weren't doing any type of like mental health help at the VA if you weren't a Vietnam veteran?
Yep, they were focused on the Vietnam veterans, so they had first priority. At that time in 2009, they wouldn't allow you to go out of source. So it was only you could only go to the VA. There was no outside doctors you could see for anything. Now that since has changed.
Whoa. Okay.
So yeah, there was no help. The only counseling I was given was 3 days a week. There was just a big group counseling session full of Vietnam veterans, which was great to go listen to them shoot the shit for 3 hours. You know what I mean? But it wasn't therapeutic for me. It wasn't helping me with what my struggles were. And let's face it, if you take 5 hours 3 days a week off of work, how long are you going to have a job?
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
it just got to the point where I'm like, yeah, that's not going to work for me. They gave me, at one time I was on 7 different narcotics. Some to bring me up, some to bring me down. This one to counteract this one, and then this one to counteract the other one, and then it was a mess. I hated the way I felt, so I just said, forget it. I'll just sleep 2 hours a night for the rest of my life. Fast forward to, I want to say December of 20, I was doing research and I found that they have service dogs trained for people with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder. And I never knew. Like, I figured service dogs were like for the blind, or having amputees or diabetes, or just other medical conditions. And then when I found that, I found an organization that would train my dog. And so I got accepted through them, the Malinois Foundation, and I went on the other side of the beehive to help raise money to get my service dog. So when I went on to the show, I told just a fraction, just a little bit of my story, just in hopes to help, people understand why a service dog will help change my life. And we ended up raising almost $6,000, and I only needed to raise $1,500. So the feeling that gave me of just unloading a little bit, because I don't have anybody to talk to. The people that I deployed with that know what I'm going through, they've committed suicide since we've been home. So I don't have that outlet, and I don't talk to my wife about it. I don't talk to my dad about it, my kids about it. I mean, it's kind of me. So fast forward a little bit, October 3rd, I was 3 turns away from rolling my truck off the Ogden Divide. I'm just at a point, I had enough shoving everything down. There's just no more room to shove anything down. And thankfully, I got a call from a friend that said, hey, come over tonight. And I'm like, yeah, I got some plans, but I'll come over later. No, you need to come over now. Well, long story short, to shut him up, I turned around, went and had a couple beers, turned into about a bottle and a half of whiskey and 12-pack of beer, and I ended up just going home for the night, and woke up the next morning and said, I can't be this low again. I cannot get to where I'm this low, because I probably won't answer the phone. And I thought back to going on Justin and Angel's podcast, and said, well, if that made me feel good, it'll make somebody else feel good. So started I started the IGY 622 podcast, and just wrapped up season 1. I'm taking a step back for a minute to kind of focus on some parts of my life that I need to really get in line. I think I've released 56 episodes or something since November. So I figure I've done a year's worth in less than a year. So I'll take just a little bit of a break and get my personal life back in order and start back up again.
Wow, dude. Well, good for you. Holy cow. So that, that's just a crazy story. I mean, whenever I hear something like that, it's very sobering. You know what I mean? It kind of brings you all the way down, because I've seen you, raise money for other veterans, and to help get started. Now, are those dogs that they already have that they go to training, or do you help, or is there, if they need a dog, do you get a dog as well?
So yeah, it's either or. So with the Malinois Foundation, the $1,500 that you have to raise, if you need a dog, it'll cover that dog. If you have a dog, it'll cover the training. So a lot of the dogs that the Malinois Foundation get are donated. We have a firefighter that's getting a golden retriever. The breeder usually charges about $5,000 for these golden retrievers. We've actually got 2 of those coming, one to a veteran, one to a first responder. We just recently raised at the Sounds of Freedom car show. We raised $1,400 selling IGY 6 hats and shirts and stickers.
Yeah.
We raised $1,400 for a veteran who had a service dog and it passed away unexpectedly. So we found a breeder out in Mississippi, got and paid for a purebred German Shepherd puppy, and presented that to him. So yeah, to date we've raised enough for 8 service dogs for first responders and our veterans.
Wow. And you know what, dude? That's so amazing because you never think like I was in the same boat as you. You know, service dogs are for people who, yeah, you know, they've got some kind of like physical maybe ailment. Not to say that, you know, I was just in the same camp as you.
Right.
Not to say that none of that stuff that doesn't matter, but it really helps people, you know, like having a dog like that. I mean, what, so can you go like into the details of like why dogs, you know, service dogs specifically help with PTSD so much?
Yeah, for sure. So some of my things, when I get really anxious, if I'm sitting down, my leg will just bounce like crazy, or I'll start twirling my ring. And with my dog's training, she'll come up, she'll break my hands apart if I'm twisting my ring, and then just stay right there. And if I don't stop, she's just very, very persistent. It's just breaking that habit, bring me back to calm. If my leg's bouncing, she's got all of her body weight over the leg that bounces because it's always my right leg. So she'll just kind of climb up and kind of rest on my leg. If we're in the grocery store or wherever, if I stop walking, she's stopped behind me in between my legs, kind of watching my back. If anybody walks up close to me, she kind of steps out a little bit so that way I can feel her moving, so I know that there's somebody behind me. If we're standing in an aisle, she'll kind of sidestep to keep people away from me. And the biggest thing is, so I just recently went to Nashville and I took her with me, and it just gave me the opportunity to get that aspect of my life back, of being able to go on a vacation and enjoy it, because downtown Nashville is crazy, the bar scene, and I'd have never been able to enjoy any of it if I didn't have my dog with me. So
yeah, because they kind of just, I mean, so what you're saying is what I'm hearing is like the dog just kind of helps you like know what's going on around you. And like, I mean, German Shepherds and Golden Retrievers, I mean, those aren't dogs you mess around with, man. You know what I mean? You know, so there's like a safety thing. You know,
my dog is a German short hair pointer. So she was my puppy from day one.
Wow.
And she would jump on me when I was going through panic attacks and anxiety attacks. She was doing the same stuff, but I didn't know what she was doing. So I was getting irritated. I'm like, what are you doing jumping up on my lap right now? Like, this is the worst time ever. And now I'm realizing like she was sensing it all along. So now we just honed in on it. And then we, you know, with intense training between the two of us for about 7 months, you know, any triggers that pop up for me, Dog Training Elite will come to the house and start training her for those triggers. So she's trained, if I'm having a night terror, to jump up, put soft pressure on me, and then increase it to get me out of that dream. So yeah, I mean, there's so many things that they can be trained for, but it's always trained for the veteran or for their triggers.
Holy cow, that's really amazing. I mean, to you know, and that's something that's really cool. I mean, I would have never thought about that. So that's what your nonprofit does then. I mean, that's the whole goal, is to get veterans, these service animals, the service dogs, to help them with whatever they need.
That's part of it. Yeah.
Okay.
So with a lot of the nonprofits, as we were going through the podcast, we were finding amazing nonprofits out there that nobody knew about. Like, I found out about 15 or 20 nonprofits here locally that I had no idea existed, because they
Oh,
don't
wow.
have the multi-million-dollar advertising budget. So that's why me and my secretary, Scott, we were like, you know what, let's just do this nonprofit. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel because there's a lot of great programs. We're just going to bring awareness to those programs and support those programs and then build a big network between multiple facets. Because
Wow.
if someone in Indiana needs help, we're gonna find a resource in Indiana and get that veteran some help. It may not be the IGY-6 that does whatever program for it, but we may fly that veteran out there.
Whew. Yeah, man, that's amazing. And I like that you mentioned it's kind of like a network of things. What was behind? I mean, obviously you talked about what you do, and you build the network and you help veterans have access to a wider network of people. But I mean, how did you logistically start this? I mean, what was the game plan when you started it? Because I mean, in my head, right, as a business owner, it's like you might not necessarily need to do that, but the nonprofit aspect of it is a great way to do it. What made you go like the nonprofit route?
Well, and that's where my secretary Scott, who is episode 1, if you listen to the podcast, he's the brains, right? He knows legal, he knows the ins and outs. So I would just said, hey, I want to do this and this and this and this. And he's like, whoa. That's not legal. We can't do that. We got to stay clear of this. So he's just been the voice of reasoning. And by starting the nonprofit and having military and first responders being members, it gives them their purpose that they've lost since getting out of the military or getting off of the fire truck or getting off of the ambulance. You know what I mean? You lose that sense of purpose. You lose your identity. So we're recreating that for people that are joining. And so that was just my vision. Is I don't want to be the nonprofit that's like, okay, we're going to take these guys fishing, which great. A getaway is good sometimes, but you go fishing on Saturday, guess what's back on Sunday? All the nightmares, everything else. So yeah, you get a day without it, but that's nothing that's long term. So we're working with a traumatologist, Dr. Lori Hood, and she's we're developing programs to go to fire stations, go to police stations, go to post-deployment units coming home from deployment to put into effect different trainings that they can do to prevent PTSD at the onset versus letting it fester and grow.
Yeah, I would imagine that that's kind of a scary thing you got to deal with, or is if you have a veteran or somebody who's having an attack or going through a trigger or something like that, and having somebody else come into the situation who might not be aware of what's going on, having to deal with that and some miscommunication that will inevitably happen there. Do you do a lot of training with like first responders who might not have experience with that and stuff like that? So or how do you deal with that?
We're still in our infancy stage. Just started. We became a 501c3 in January 21st. In doing so, my board is made up of people who have never been in a nonprofit, right? So we're going very, very slow. There's a boulder at the top of the mountain, and we are holding the boulder up because there is so many things trying to fly at us at once that now I want to be very, very meticulous, in particular on where we go, because I don't want to be an organization that hard charges for 6 months and then boom, fizzles out. I want something that's going to last longer than me, you know what I mean, and just keep growing and growing and growing. And so we're taking small steps, and I hate it because I want it done now. I want it done yesterday. And we have to go slow in order to go, slow is fast.
Yeah, slow is fast. Well, especially when you're dealing with 501c3s. There's so many regulations behind a nonprofit to make, and what's good and sad at the same time is when you're dealing with nonprofits and the government, It can be, if one slip up can make
Yep.
it all go away. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Make it all go away. And so,
And
yeah, I mean, I get it.
That's why we're going slow. I mean, we had a hard time filing because, some of the things we want to do is affect legislation, to get PTSD covered in the workman's comp for our first responders. It's happening. Wow. It's happening in another state, in Kansas. From a guest that was on the podcast, his station started pushing it, and it got up to legislation, and it's getting into a bill to be passed hopefully this year. So, so then we have to go. Okay, now do we have to file this form, or do we have to file this form? Okay, if we're going to do this, we can't dedicate more than this much money, and then if you dedicate more than this much, so there's just a lot that go into a 501c3, and thank God I have Scott, because I'd have screwed up a lot by now.
Yeah, right. Well, what's okay. I got to go back to something that, one thing that you just said, but that reminded me of something that you said earlier in the show. And that was that mental health, first of all, so mental health wasn't covered by the VA unless you were a Vietnam veteran.
Right.
So what that is sounds so crazy to me. I mean, okay, I'm obviously pretty young, so Vietnam might not be as far away as I think it is. But I just, I feel like there's so many things that happened after that would be necessary to deal with. What the heck is going on with that?
So mainly because there's not a lot of VA clinics. Okay, you got to think there's a VA center here in Ogden. There's the main VA hospital in Salt Lake, and now they have a couple of remote little locations. Well, each location may have a counselor. So you go to the hospital, you may have one or two, counselors. So, and then you figure how many hundreds of thousands of veterans that we have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's just not the people for it. And so they have to kind of limit their resources. And unfortunately, I think it also falls under who's in office, who's the president, and what their feeling is for the VA. I mean, as bad as that sounds, you kind of see a change between different administrations.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. But and as soon as you said that, it registered with me, because I think that's the main reason we're in a mental health crisis right now, is not anything other than just lack of resources.
Right.
It's not that people don't want to help. It's like, it's like there's only one of us, or there's only two of us. We can only do so much, which makes sense. And I'm sure that's a whole nother can of worms that we don't.
There is a lack of resources. I think the resources are getting better, but it's the stigma. It's the stigma for civil servants, military, that it's weak to speak. If you're having problems, you're now considered weak if you talk about it or you try to get help for it. If you're an officer and you're struggling with some PTSD, now you're a liability if you're on the job. If you're a firefighter and the last call where you maybe weren't able to save this child, that image plays in your mind over and over again. Now, can you be trusted to go on the next call? So, when you do speak out about it, it's not the media that's bashing it. It's your brothers and sisters next to you. They're telling you, quit being a wuss, suck it up. So people just bury it in. And that's why we're losing on average 22 soldiers a day. We're losing 17 to 20 first responders a day. The divorce rate between veterans and first responders is almost 48 to 52%. I think the last thing I saw. Domestic violence is growing, and that doesn't even take into effect the 33 soldiers a day that died of overdose from prescribed medication. So some of our main focus is just getting it out there and just trying to break that stigma that it's not weak to speak. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah, how's that going for you guys? I feel like
It's
that would be
going
a
really good.
okay. I feel it. I just, from my perspective, it feels like that would be a pretty tough battle to fight, especially when you have like this people in the military have a certain, way that they like to speak, or, they have this certain kind of like, you know, culture around them that's portrayed in the media and on social media, and then, and I would imagine that that's pretty hard to fight.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's where the podcast has really taken off. Is I
Yeah.
don't edit. I mean, when you hear the episode, it is the raw episode that is how the conversation went. We don't video them, just so we can have a raw conversation without the fear of I don't want people to know what I look like. Uh, but a lot of people, I would say 80% of my guests have unloaded their struggles, their demons to me as the first person that's heard any of those stories, because they listen to the podcast, they hear that I'm raw, I'm real, I'm open about it, and they feel like it's a safe spot to open up about some of their struggles and not get judgment, not feel like a monster, not feel any kind of way. So I think that's what one thing that the podcast has really helped. I mean, I get probably on average 30 to 40 emails, text messages on TikTok or Instagram a day. Hey, I listened to episode 3 today, and I just want to tell you, hey, that saved me. I needed to hear that today. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing amazing stuff. I mean, that was one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you on my podcast, was because I like to talk to people who are interesting. I knew that you had the nonprofit, and I didn't know you had the business, but for me, it wasn't about any of that this time. It was about, you're doing amazing work out there, and I was like, man, I got to just figure out, you know what I mean? I think it'd just be sweet. And the fight that that we're all trying to do, that you're at the helm of fighting this stigma. I mean, it's such a big deal,
It is.
and it really doesn't matter where you go. So what is, talking about it is obviously a great thing. Probably one of the best things you do. But fighting it with, because there is like if you're struggling personally, there's a stigma with you, right? Like,
right.
People are going to, they're thinking outside of themselves. People are going to do this or that. But how do you kind of approach the conversation with somebody who, might not be struggling with that, but thinks there's a stigma behind mental health?
I think they just need to be educated. Really.
Yeah.
I mean, I hid all of my demons for many, many years. And after after everything on October 3rd, starting the podcast, there was a lot of people that, I wouldn't say a lot of people, there was a couple of people that questioned if I was just doing this for fame or trying to, and I don't make a penny off of any of my podcasts. All I do is spend money. So
Yeah.
I don't look for attaboys. I don't take any credit for anything.
Yeah.
But there's a story, and every time I tell my story, it gets that much easier. And I know other people can relate to it. And it's just about starting that conversation. And I mean, if people are going to feel a type of way about mental health, then they're going to feel a type of way about mental health. Like I'm not here to change anybody else's perception. Like some people think that if you have mental health issues, you're crazy and you need to be locked up. And I don't think that's always the case.
Yeah, I think there is a lack of empathy in our society. I think a lot of it has to do with social media. I think a lot of it has to do with, people just, you got Twitter fingers, and you can bash somebody online anonymously. And I feel like that's created a huge disconnect, because you would never say that. I mean, hopefully you would never say that in person.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But you're comfortable saying it on a
being
online
a
or something.
Yep, when you can hide behind a computer screen or just use your thumb.
Yeah, man, it's bananas. And I just, because I've had other mental health counselors and I've worked with mental health counselors before, and it's just this whole idea of like educating people, like what it's not, and like kindness and
Yeah.
we just go straight for thing, if we don't understand something, we don't take the time to learn about it. We just, we go to whoever is our, trusted source of information and just do whatever they tell us to do. And that's not any good either. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
And unfortunately, that's the day and age we live in. It's people don't do the time to do their own research. It's if Facebook says this, it's real. If this is what I saw on Fox News, this is real life. If it's what I saw on CNN, it's real life. They don't go, okay, wait a minute. These guys all have agendas. They all get paid from whatever side. Like the truth is in there. You've just got to not be lazy. Do some work. Do some legwork. Expand your mind a little.
Yeah, listen to podcasts like yours and talk to real people. Then that's when you get the story. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's when you get. That's when it clicks. I think that's what happened for me. I just the more that I the more that I read, the more that I talked to people about subjects like starting this podcast, talking to real people. Like that's when I realized that. I was more in the middle of everything. I heard you talk on an episode like it's not about Democrats or Republicans or whatever, right? But like when it comes to this issue particularly, you got to be kind of in the middle to help people because it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what side you're on.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, mental health doesn't care your ethnicity, doesn't care about your religion, it doesn't care about what you identify as. It just doesn't care. It's just gonna be what it is. And so, that's I've kind of started a hashtag don't be a dick. We just need to love one another, do stuff for other people, just quit thinking about ourselves for a minute, even if it's just smiling, right? Or you're walking into the grocery store and you hold the door open for the person coming in behind you. Just little things like that just can really turn someone's day around. And just be kind.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. It's free.
Yeah. Don't be a dick. It's good advice. It's good advice, to be honest with you, man. That's great, dude. Well, I want to ask you kind of like, so obviously I'm not a veteran. I appreciate though. I love everything that veterans do. But I kind of wanted to get your opinion or maybe your expertise on how someone in my situation could be more empathetic to a veteran, or like if you walk into a situation where like clearly something isn't right and you're not sure like how to interact and how to kind of talk to people.
That's hard because I mean, I've been married almost 19, 18 years. And my wife learns about me through my podcast. She learns about my stories, my struggles through the podcast. And that's unfortunate. And it's put struggles on our marriage which is some of the reason why I'm taking a step back from the podcast, is to try to make sure we can fix things. But really just be there for them. A veteran's not going to talk to you unless they're ready to. So, just be there. And just ask, call them on the phone. Be like, hey, remember that time we went and did this? Like, I was thinking about that. It made me think of you, man. How the hell have you been? Just recognize them. You know what I mean? Because a lot of us, we feel like we're all alone and we just kind of get forgotten about because people are like, oh, he's strong. He's got it together. Well, we don't.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
So that's really the only thing, is just be there for them and let them know that you're there if they ever have any problems. But I wouldn't go and be like, okay, well, I know you went to war, so what are you fighting? Did you kill anybody? Like, don't ask that question. I can't tell you how many times people will walk up and they'll be nonchalant as hell and say, so how many people did you kill? Who asked that? Like, really?
I don't know, man. I don't know, man.
So, just be there, recognize them.
Mhm.
You know,
And don't
for
ask
me,
stupid questions.
don't ask stupid questions. Like,
That is bizarre. Like I personally would never ask that question. When you said, that is just a weird question in general to ask somebody.
yeah,
Just in general.
I just don't. I'm
Oh,
like, who? Do you just randomly meet someone and be like, so how many people you slept with today?
yeah.
Like, no.
Right. Yeah, that's oh my gosh. That's so crazy. Holy cow. Well, that's good. And I mean, I just wanted to, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do. And, I mean, everybody, we're all human at the end of the day. And so we just treat people like humans. You know what I mean? We're nice
Right.
and stuff, but
I mean,
there is different ways to do it.
I would tell you, I mean, if you know a veteran, and there's signs, right? Everybody knows there's signs to depression, and a lot of us want to turn the other cheek and be like, yeah, that guy is kind of messed up. Well, rather than just kind of have your feeling about it, tell them, hey, you ever heard of the IGY 622 podcast? Check it out. Check out. I think you might dig it. It's another veteran that just talks to veterans. I've had that work more than the civilian trying to just have a casual conversation about trauma.
Yeah. Well, because one of the things of empathy is you want to put yourself in someone's shoes, but that's tough. I mean, it's always better to hear it from somebody who's been in your shoes.
Right.
And that's why we need people like you. That's why we need your podcast and podcasts like it, and for people to be aware of it, because like a civilian like me, I could only go so far.
Right.
But when you have somebody and that they've seen what you've seen and they've been through what you've been through, and they're showing you that there's a way, because they've literally they're at the end and they can walk you through it. That's different, man. That's different.
Well, and I tell everybody, like, I don't know. Like, I know I was in the hole. I was deep. I was ready to be done. So I know where you're at. I know how I got out. So I'll sit in here. We'll listen together. I'll listen to where you're at. I'm going to show you how I got out. Now, I ain't got it figured out. But by God, we're going to go figure it out together. Because I know this guy over here, he's got it a little bit more figured out than I do. So we're going to go join him. And we're going to keep going down the road. And then guess what? We're going to find someone else that has it a little bit more figured out, and then a little bit more figured out. It's just not leaving anybody behind, and not judging anybody for, stuff that they can't help going on in their brain.
Yeah. And that's the part that I think part of the stigma comes through, right? Is like, we don't understand that, if you've never felt what your brain can do, and how it almost feels like your mind is betraying you.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that is tough, and it's hard to even imagine. And man, just walking people through it, dude. I mean, it's unbelievable, And but you've said since the VA and those kinds of resources have kind of changed the way they do things. Now you can kind of go outside to other resources other than maybe the VA.
Yeah, other providers that, because I mean, say you want to go to the dentist with the VA, you may be waiting 8 months to be able to get into a dentist. So they've opened it up to, you can go to outside clinic if the need,
they're covered.
Yeah, as long as they're within the network and they take TRICARE.
Okay, so that's what this is mainly about, right? It's the insurance that is guaranteed to veterans, the TRICARE. Okay, and that covers. Yeah, that makes sense. And that's
and I can only speak on behalf of the VA here in Utah, because the VA in Utah is, I mean, for the most part, it's pretty good. I mean, we have the U right across the street at the main hospital, so. We have a lot of the U doctors over with the VA. Now, I know there's other states that the VA system is god awful. So it's just hit and miss on where you live. I know the VA clinics and stuff down south in St. George area, not as good as what you got up north.
Which is totally bizarre, dude. I was having a conversation. So my wife mentioned that we were driving, and I've read a lot of books and tried to navigate through this whole healthcare system, and because it's bananas, um, dude, it's totally crazy. But my wife sees this billboard on I-15, and she's like, "Why are hospitals advertising?" And I'm like, "I don't know, man. Isn't that the strangest thing you've ever seen?
Yeah.
Like, my hospital's better than this other hospital." It's like, bro, what are you talking about?
We
That
have
doesn't
this
make
long of a wait time. What's the other hospital have?
Yeah, or wait time, or like, I read this, to sidetrack just a little bit. I read this book where they surveyed like 1,000 hospitals for a very routine procedure, and got they got all different prices from each of these hospitals, and they ranged like almost $100,000 in between pricing. And I was like, how does that even make sense, man? I'm not going to the hospital to buy a car, dude. Like, you gotta, this is the same thing.
It's exactly it.
It's bananas, man. And so, yeah, I feel it though. That's the one thing I have a lot of empathy for, is like, freak, man, we got to fit, And so the fact that you found at least one way that can help pretty much, I mean, any veteran. Has there ever been a time when a veteran, and a dog maybe isn't the best mix?
Yeah. Unfortunately, so we do a lot of work with the Malinois Foundation. This year, they've had over 75 applications from military veterans put in for a service dog, and of that, five veterans completed the application process. So,
oh geez,
so that's the problem, is because they obviously have to vet whoever they're going through, whoever they're looking to pick up, to make sure that they're not going to be a risk to the dog. You know what I mean? To themselves, and that they're in a mental capacity. They're ready. They have to be ready to admit that that they're not okay. And until they admit that they're not okay, they're not going to be ready for that change. Because I wasn't ready to be. It just got to a point where I was like, I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was tired of just living. I wanted to be an active participant in my life. So it takes that. It takes being ready for change.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, that makes a lot of sense, now that I think about it. And I really value your opinion on that, because that is the first one. That's the first step, right? In the 12 steps, or whatever you look at, you gotta be willing to admit that there's something going on, and that there's something that can help you outside of yourself, whether that's, the universe or someone else or something. Because it's crazy, is like, I respect people who don't believe in God or a higher power or something like that, but sometimes that higher power is like other people,
right?
You know what I mean? Sometimes that can just be anybody else, and it's amazing how some people won't even let that come in. Like, I get it. Okay, if you don't believe in God, that's not a big deal. Let's be friends. But like, other people though, like your homies who are ready to help you, you can't even give that, that to them almost.
Yep.
Whew. Well, man, it's bananas. But I know you guys are doing a good work. I mean, I tune into your podcast as much as I can, and it's absolutely, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Yeah. So what's next? I mean, you're taking some personal time. Good for you. It takes a lot to realize that, and we'll support you all the way through it, man. But what's next? What's on the horizon?
Well, I look at it as, I talk to people and I say, you got to do what you have to do to be happy. Like, it's okay to take some time out for yourself, take a step back, take a knee, recompose yourself, and then keep going. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I don't know, maybe the break I need is 2 weeks. Maybe it's 3 weeks. Maybe it's a month. I don't know. Going to start up season 2 of the podcast, change up the logo, the artwork, change up the intro, the outro, but really focus on focus on moving the nonprofit, helping out as many veterans and first responders as we can. We're getting with the state of Utah with the National Guard and to be able to go speak with returning units when they get home from deployments, because the briefings you go through are from officers that's their job, is to give the same briefing they've given for 20 years. Where I think if they listen to a guy that's tattooed up, real life experience, I think the message is going to get a little bit better and be more received. So, going to put a lot of focus into that. I'm going to put, obviously the focus into myself, because if I'm not right, I can't help anybody else. So.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I mean it shows. I mean, for those people who you talk with, it just shows them. You're like, they see you. Hey, I'm taking a break for a minute. I gotta make sure everything's good here. And whatever that means, right? Like for me too, it might not even be anything bad. I need to take a step back and regain the passion for all this, because maybe avoid burnout, or maybe recover from burnout, because I mean it happens. I mean, you could be working for the best cause, and when you got a family, a wife, your job, a side gig, a nonprofit,
two jobs, of wife,
dude. Yeah,
kids, grandkids, nonprofit, podcast
dude.
host. Like there's just there's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, call a timeout, man. Call a timeout.
Take a knee, pull the rucksack off, readjust my load, and then get back up and keep walking forward.
Yeah, man. Wow, beautiful, man. That's absolutely beautiful. Well, cool, man. I appreciate your time. I know you've been at work all day, so I won't take a ton of your time, but I do appreciate the time that you have spent. I do appreciate the knowledge you have given. But so, where can people support the nonprofit? Where can people listen to the podcast? Plug yourself, all that good stuff.
Perfect. The podcast can be found on any of the major platforms, whether it be Apple, Spotify, Pandora, all of them. You can be found there. You can go to www.igy622.com. Right on the first landing page, there's a spot you can donate. My organization is 100% nonprofit, so no board members will ever receive a penny. That was one thing that I was very, very adamant about. Because some of the big organizations, their board members are receiving multi-million dollars a year. And I figure, I told everybody, the more we take for ourselves, the less we help somebody else. So it's all out of the love and wanting to help somebody else out. You can buy shirts from the website, hats from the website. Everything's going towards, whether it be service dogs or, I mean, we've helped soldiers that were, get them into substance abuse programs in other states, help them cover hotel rooms, because they've lost their house. Just multiple things. We don't want to be tied down into one specific program. We want to be pretty flexible to help whoever we can. So all donations are appreciated. You can find, I usually promote the podcast on TikTok at IGY622_podcast. That's the same for the Instagram. Where I'm taking a break, I might make some videos, or I won't. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
You can also follow us at IGY622 on Facebook. If you're military or a first responder, within the IGY6 page on Facebook, there's a private group for military and first responders only. Every Wednesday, we have a video conference call, a Zoom. Basically, it's going to the best bar and having like-minded people in there. Sometimes it's just laughing and joking and drinking, and sometimes it gets pretty serious. But it's a safe space to go and know that you're not going to be judged. We also have a private group for the spouses, because where we as veterans don't know how to deal with what we're doing, our spouses don't know either. So the spouses have their own page that they can go and talk about whatever, and the veteran or first responder can't see their page. So just kind of a little resource that we have.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. That's way cool. So you kind of got them separate so that everybody can feel like they're talking and kind of, yeah, that's important. A lot of people don't understand that side of it. Is like, it's not that I don't want to tell you, it's that it's sometimes it's just like I got to work through what's going on in my head, and if I tell you right now, it's not going to make any sense, and it might hurt you. Well, that's not what I'm trying to do. You know what I'm saying? It's like I just need to work through this real quick, and then I'll let you know, or I'll work through this really quick and realize something, and now it's not an issue, and and that's good. That's way cool. Right on.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Hey,
I appreciate it, man. I'll make sure we plug it off. Absolutely.